So we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. So this hearing is hereby called to order. I would note for the civil, or the record, all civil service commissioners are present. We're here today to hear the appeal of Brian Gramza, who was removed from the 2021 firefighter eligibility list on June 27, 2021, due to failure to pass the psychological exam. The appellate will have the right to make a statement and/or present witnesses or documentary evidence followed by the city. At this time, does either side have a list of witnesses?
Chris?
Oh, I didn't have a copy. Well, shoot, did I get a copy of the agenda?
It's probably not within the, it's not within those.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's okay.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
So we're going to start normal?
Okay, all right. Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll call this meeting to order. Okay, so the first item here is approval of the minutes from May 23rd, 2022.
I move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Are there any petitions or communications?
None other than the request for the appeal.
Okay. Are there any reports?
There are none?
Okay. No unfinished business, correct?
There is none.
Okay, so new business, one item, removal of candidate number 4, Brian Gromza, from the 2021 firefighter eligibility list. Do we need a motion for this then?
We need a motion to do this first because per our guidelines, we would remove him and then he is appealing the removal.
Okay,
Right now.
so we'll entertain a motion.
So we need to remove him first?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually done in a separate meeting, but because he requested this and we wanted to be able to move through this, we're doing it at the same meeting, but first he must be removed.
Okay.
I agree there.
So how do we remove a person?
It would be by motion.
Yeah, I'm talking about without knowing what he's being removed for.
He is being removed because he failed the psychological exam. And our HR director can speak to that if you'd like her to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we do have a process and guidelines that we follow when we bring in new recruits. Aside from Mr. Gramza, we did have 4 others that were in this most recent hiring process. All of them have gone through these similar onboarding requirements and conditional needs. The psychological evaluation is one of them. So Mr. Gramza was one of 5 whom we sent for the evaluation as a condition of employment, and his was the evaluation that came back with a not passing score. So again, per guidelines under the civil service rules, an individual must pass a psychological evaluation in order to be considered for employment.
Okay, so on the, just a question, so on the eligibility list, his score did not include the psychological test?
No, Commissioner, it does not. So the individuals who are on an eligibility list are ranked there based on their initial physical fitness assessment, or their initial testing assessments, their physical fitness scores. There's an interview component, and then that is ranked for the eligibility list. Then when we need to draw from that to hire and backfill openings, that's when we certify the lists of eligibles. HR makes contact with individuals in order, asks them to come in for another interview or have some conversation, and then we move through the conditional employment process.
So they're removed until this list is expired, right?
Correct.
Then they can reapply.
Correct. Did I answer your questions?
That's it for me.
Okay.
You satisfied?
Yes.
All right, thanks, Michelle. Okay, so we will entertain a motion to remove candidate number 4.
I put a motion to have the candidate removed.
Thank you,
I'll support.
thank you.
So in supporting this, let me say this. For him to go through the appeal, he must be removed first.
Correct,
Okay, yes.
thank you. Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So now we are to the point of the actual appeal hearing for Mr. Gramza.
Yes.
So I'll go through the script again. We're here today to hear the appeal of Brian Gromza, who was removed from the 2021 firefighter eligibility list on June 27, 2021, due to failure to pass the psychological exam. The appellant will have the right to make a statement and/or present witnesses or documentary evidence filed by the city. At this time, does either side have a list of witnesses? No? Okay, so do we need to swear our witness in? Is that the process?
I think at this point, because it's both sides simply providing statements, I don't think swearing them in. We do have a record of the proceedings.
Okay,
They're not going to be questioned by me. I don't believe there's going to be any cross-examination that you do of the city. I will tell all of you, and for the record, that rather than identifying each of the exhibits in advance of the start of the meeting, I provided the commission with a copy of both the appellant's exhibits as well as the city's. I provided the appellant with a copy of the city's and confirmed with the appellant that the exhibits he provided are the ones that are submitted for the record, so that anyone can have questions or provide information about any of the exhibits that have been provided.
okay, thank you. Okay, so we're at the point now where we will ask Mr. Gromza to proceed with your case.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can we hear it?
Yep.
Good, okay. So I'd like to start off by saying thank you all for the opportunity to come before you to appeal my removal from the eligibility list. I greatly appreciate everybody's time and coming in for this and giving me the chance to speak to you today. I have a written statement here that I've prepared, so I'll be referencing that for the remainder of this. My name is Brian Gramza, and I have been in the hiring process for the firefighter position for the city of Battle Creek. I have been through each step and was given a conditional offer of employment. One of the final steps of the process is being given a psychological evaluation. On June 3rd, I received a letter from the Human Resources Department of the city indicating that I had not passed the psychological evaluation. Quite honestly, I was taken aback by this. I did not foresee that coming, and I have, in my own brain, have not been able to come up with a reason why that may have happened. I have been working actively as a firefighter for the past 12 years, beginning my fire service career at the age of 17. For the past 4 years of my career, I've been working as a full-time sergeant for the Brighton Area Fire Authority. To successfully be selected for this position, I was required to pass a hiring process which included an oral board interview, a background investigation, a chief's interview with both the fire chief and the deputy chief, and finally, a psychological evaluation. The psychological exam that I was administered by Dr. Jay Witherell determined that I would be an excellent fit as a firefighter in the area of Brighton. The role that I currently serve comes with the responsibility not only to be a leader on and off the fire ground, but also as a mentor and example for all members of the authority that I currently work for, from the newest to the most experienced. I strive every day to ensure that every action I take sets the example for what it means to be a firefighter and how important the service we collectively provide to the community really is. This responsibility also extends to teaching the next generation of firefighters. I have been working actively as a fire service instructor since early 2020, earning my certified fire instructor in the state of Michigan in early 2022. The opportunity I've been lucky enough to be given to teach the newest members of the fire service has not only helped me to become a better firefighter myself, but has also taught me that interpersonal interaction and that approach to instruction assists individuals with their learning immensely. As you know, the psychological examination that I was administered consists of approximately 800 written questions followed by an interview. My sit-down interview during the psychological evaluation lasted approximately 15 minutes. I have in my possession, and it has been provided to all of you, the letters of recommendation and my past 4 years of annual review for my current employer. You will see that each one indicates that I'm an outstanding employee and leader within my organization. These reviews also show that I'm not a perfect individual. There are mistakes that you will see in there and past patterns that I have worked very hard to correct over the years, and those reviews do reflect that I have been correcting my imperfections over the years. Nobody's perfect, and I strive to get better every day. Additionally, through each step in the hiring process for the city of Battle Creek, the members of the command staff that have interviewed me felt that I was an outstanding candidate. The letter from Human Resources indicates that my only recourse for the psychological examination and the results of it are to request to come before this commission and request your authorization to reestablish my place on the eligibility list for the position of firefighter. Considering the information in the statement that I'm providing today, I'm requesting that. As you know, all new employees are probationary and at will for the first year of their employment. Certainly, this period of time allows the supervisors the ability to truly assess one and determine that if they will be a good fit for the department. I am confident enough in my ability, and if it helps to alleviate any concerns, I am willing to extend my probationary firefighter time to the length that is determined by the commission if that is chosen to do so. Understanding that I serve as an at-will employee during the entirety of my probationary time, this will give me ample time to prove myself to the individuals that I will be working with on a daily basis that I am fit to be working for the city of Battle Creek. In closing, I truly believe that the outcome of the psychological examination does not show who I truly am as a person. I love being a firefighter and serving the community that I work for. I love the brothers and sisters that I have the chance to work with every single day, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to work here in the city of Battle Creek. Should you grant my request, I assure that your decision will not be one that you regret. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Okay.
Are there any questions?
Any questions? Or
Can we ask questions?
Sure.
All right. And I'm not sure who this is to, probably to the Human Resources. Is there a standard psychological test? How can he pass one test in one area and then fail in another?
You got it. You'll-
I'll get it away.
Yeah, there are parameters on the psychological evaluation that's received in Human Resources. So there are acceptable ranges between percentages that are low, medium, and high risk. And again, everybody is administered the same two types of examinations when they see our provider, which is Dr. Lamson. It is a California Psychological Inventory and then a Personality Assessment Inventory. And again, as I mentioned, the results and how the candidate responds to the questions in those provide indications of a low risk, medium risk, or high risk in those specific areas. And again, the results that came back is that they were outside of our limits.
So every area has their own set of standards.
Could you be more specific on that
So-
question,
so,
Commissioner? I'm sorry.
For instance, with, in Michigan, in the high school piece, the state of Michigan in sports, they have put together a standard of when an athlete can play.
Sure.
But each school basically can change that and say, well, these are our standards for that person to play. Is that the same type of, as what we're doing?
So, from my understanding with the history of our psychological providers, we have an individual who really looks at what we would term MCOLS standards. So when he is evaluating our candidates, the standards that are used, and I do want to qualify, I did speak with this psychological provider twice on Mr. Gramza's behalf, just to have some conversation, really understand what we were getting in the psychological evaluation. But again, the standards that are used is that the applicant needs to be free from mental or emotional instability, which may tend to impair the efficient performance of duties or may endanger the lives of others. So Mr. Gramza did say that they are a lot of questions, over 400 questions on one exam, over 300 on another. And they are broken down into certain sections, certain areas, certain focus points. Individuals who answer with certain honesties, right, are going to have results come back, whether or not it's a low risk, medium risk, or high risk. And again, some of Mr. Gramza's answers led the psychological evaluator to state that he was outside the acceptable ranges and would be high risk.
Commissioner McCoy, further follow-up is yes, different departments can have different standards.
Correct.
And so that is, the MCOLS is the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards, and it's the police department standard for eligibility. It's simply one that has been used, but it's for police officers typically.
Yeah. So,
Sorry, Mr.
go ahead.
I also want to just, the comparison on the information that's received is then compared with firefighters as well. So general public is compared, but also firefighters are compared with our candidates.
So how was that established? I guess the question I'm asking is there any documentation of these standards, whether they worked or not, based in Battle Creek?
I don't know if I can answer that question. I apologize. But when you talk about the standards, again, so there are recommendations. The doctor may state that this individual, and I'm not just saying Grams, I'm using a generalization, has scored 10, and normal range is 0 to 7. Or this individual scored in this area at 100, normal range is 90 to 115. So there's ranges that they look at. I think what I heard you ask me is if I have individuals who have previously passed a psychological, are we then able to evaluate them to these standards post hire date? Is that kind of what you were asking me?
Yeah, something like that. It's, I guess, is there proof that these standards are basically good? Because, I mean, it's based upon an opinion.
It's based on a conversation with the candidate, correct, but it also is based on the information on how they answered those nearly 700 questions and what type of character or behavioral traits those answers would then perceive.
So I guess a question I have is, I would assume that the psychological is built around the skill set of what firefighters kind of need to be.
So certainly
on
it
their
is looking
job.
for a job fit and a suitability, and emotional stability. And I do understand that Mr. Grams is currently a firefighter.
Right.
It is not an assessment that says, are you a good firefighter? It doesn't test his job skill set, how well he does perform as a firefighter. It really is more on the personality, demeanor, character, what interactions with authority, those types of things.
So a question I have, because I went through evaluations, is part of the exam deal with interaction between the team, like that individual and how they interact with the other firefighters and command staff? Is that part of what it is?
I don't want to overly generalize because I want to provide you with good information, but again, the information that's provided in the psychological evaluation is strictly confidential to human resources. So, Chris, I think what I heard you ask is, I wish I could rephrase this. So we're looking at if there are personality traits or any type of issues that may lend themselves to be a concern down the road. And Dr. Lamson would make a medical opinion as to whether or not the individual has the stability to go ahead and take on the stressors of the role, i.e. fighting fire, or are they good with command staff? Will they listen to their authority? Would we have concerns about whether or not they buck authority or the system? Would they take criticism well with those types of things? Does that make sense?
Yeah. You've helped.
Okay.
Yeah. Are you satisfied,
Yeah,
Commissioner?
one more question. So, if you got it was Mr. Gramza? Been a firefighter for 12 years. Okay, so,
Here's,
all right, so, going back to the psychological piece, I guess this was for you. So I guess I'm just trying to get clear of what this exam is supposed to be based on. And if you're a firefighter for 12 years, and it seems like there was no, well, if I knew what the psychological pieces were, or if you don't know what they are, which we don't, how can we make a determination of whether or not he's going to be good for the Battle Creek Fire Department and not from the fire department he came from?
so I would say that we do rely on the expert, which is the doctor, to make that determination. And in this case, Dr. Lamson has had a very long history with providing psychologicals to the city of Battle Creek, as he does other municipalities, both in police and fire. We do review each evaluation as it comes back, and again, you can see some differences in candidates just based on the way that they're answering the scores and how the psychological reports come back. So I do rely on him to make that determination. I understand that Mr. Gramza came to him with 12 years of experience. Again, the psychological evaluations also are only typically for a good, are good for a portion of time, like 6 months, before an individual would want to be or have to be retested. So there are certain aspects of an individual's life, for whatever reason, where they may have tested well or passed an exam years before, but maybe circumstances have changed, or the way that I've answered the questions now in the last 5 years has been different, and I've now reached a level of a different risk and not passed this psychological exam.
I'd be interested in knowing, and it's not, this has nothing to do with this case, but it may, based upon racial lines, because people come from different areas, and they have different experiences, and does that test accommodate that? That would be interesting to know. That's something maybe we can look into.
Sure.
But I can't see how one test can paint with one brush from where people are coming from, whether they're black, white, Hispanic, wherever. That would be interesting for me to know.
So it is one portion of all of the assessments on firefighter eligibility, right? So they went through their test scores, they went through their physical fitness, then they went through their evaluations via interview, then typically a background check and a psychological evaluation. So try to look at all aspects. Did you have any more questions for me?
I'm good.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Good. Okay, so I guess the next item here, and I know the city has had a chance to have quite a bit of statements here, but are there any other additional city portion of the case that needs to be presented?
Michelle, do you have anything else you want to say, or what? I don't.
No, if this is before you wanted to make your final determination. I understand the commission is going to rule on Mr. Gramza based on the information you have in front of you. It's my position as the HR director with the city to maintain and the recommendation that the psychological evaluation, the candidate did not pass. So he would be free to reapply when the eligibility list expires, and we would go from there.
Okay. All right. Okay, so
Yeah, one more question.
Sure.
Got one more question. Can they take more than one test? Say they go somewhere else and take a test from another doctor.
I'm only aware of that happening once in the history that has been provided to me by the city clerk. The circumstances for that individual having the opportunity to have a second psychological examination are a little bit different than I believe, than the circumstances here. And in fact, when we look at the history of individuals who have been removed based on failed psychologicals, a majority of them were not offered the opportunity to have a second exam.
They didn't appeal. How many, were there appeals though? Were that,
They were the appeal hearings.
these are the appeal hearings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I have 14 here listed. This is since 1998. 14 that had been removed because they failed to do a psychological examination. The motion was upheld for 13 of them. One of them had a second psychological exam.
anything else from the city?
They don't get to choose where they go. You couldn't have somebody just go get another psych. It would have to be by another psychologist appointed by the city.
The commission, if it was your recommendation, we would not just have the individual go pick another psychological provider and go on their own. It would have to be something that is approved by the city and by this commission, somebody who we'd have a known relationship with.
Okay. Okay, any other questions before we ask Mr. Gromza for his, if you have final thoughts? Anything else?
No.
Okay. Do you have any final statement?
I have no further statement. I just would like to once again extend my appreciation for the opportunity for this chance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any closing comments from the city? No? Okay. Okay. So we can have our own deliberation here, comments. Why don't we start with you?
I have no comment.
No comment? Okay. How about you, Commissioner?
Well, I mean, after 14 appeals over, 32 years? And all were taken off the list. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Well, one was not. One was
except
reinstated.
one was reinstated. Do we know why
Why?
that one was reinstated?
That was done, so she was removed from the list 11/13/1998. The appeal date was 12/1/1998. And then she requested a second examination. The qualified psychologist was required, and the candidate passed the second psych and therefore was reinstated on the eligibility list, and she was hired April 5th of 1999.
So I guess after, I mean, if you have 14 taken off after 32 years, unless we're gonna, if he has a request for a second opinion, that's all I can see. But if that's the rule, it's the rule.
Right.
Unless the rules can be changed. I mean, if it's a rule, it's a rule.
When you say a rule,
If they don't pass the psychological test, they're taken off of the eligibility list.
yeah,
That's the rule, right?
that's, yeah. Yeah. So I will give my thoughts.
I'd like to hear it.
So first of all, I want to say thank you for coming here. And I did, I did go through all the evaluations, and I saw obviously a lot of good things in the evaluations, but I also saw kind of a common theme, a little bit of a red flag. And I noticed that there's always a common theme of working on soft skills and not getting frustrated, not maybe challenging leadership. And I don't know what this the psychological is, but my guess is that if it's like a lot of the jobs I was involved with hiring people, a big thing that you're always looking for is you come up with a set of skills, and lots of jobs have a lot different type skills. And I would suspect with firefighters, a lot of it is you have to really trust command, you have to trust teamwork when you're in a stressful environment. And again, what I noticed was a bit of a red flag for me, and that is that a lot of the areas were very good, but there was always a bit of that area is a bit of a red flag. And again, I went through however many were supplied, and so that, I'm going to assume that has a lot to do with it. And so that's what I'll be basing my decision on.
Yeah, I saw that too. I went through all the evaluations, job evaluations. I think it was 4 or 5.
At least 4.
Yeah, and that theme kept coming up about the soft skills, physical things and other like that was fine,
Yeah.
but it came to those things.
Yeah, and I will also say this, because I've done a lot of evaluations in my career. When someone takes the time to put down an item, that's a big thing. It's easier to not address items. And so I had to take that very serious, so. Any other comments, or?
No.
Okay, that being the case, we need to entertain a motion
Yes.
to either uphold or reverse the removal. So I need a motion.
Well, I move to uphold the removal.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Okay, so those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. So that closes the public hearing, and now we will entertain public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay. Seeing none, commissioner comments? Anything?
None.
Nope.
I have nothing. With that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.